Cientos de deportes durante todo el año y los mejores eventos en vivo. Descarga la app, regístrate y obtén 400 pesos de regalo. Caliente.mx. Más acción, más diversión.
La historia se construye con cada paso. Son destellos que quedan marcados en la memoria del tiempo. Momentos que llevamos tatuados en la piel. Recordamos de dónde venimos, para darle un sentido hacia dónde vamos. Nuestra herencia se llama innovación. Presentamos un balón que se transforma en nuestro legado, para seguir haciendo historia. Void, 100 años de innovación.
Renuncia a ser solo un espectador y conviértete en otro jugador en caliente.mx. Cientos de deportes durante todo el año y los mejores eventos en vivo. Descarga la app, regístrate y obtén 400 pesos de regalo. Caliente.mx. Más acción, más diversión.
La historia se construye con cada paso. Son destellos que quedan marcados en la memoria del tiempo. Momentos que llevamos tatuados en la piel. Recordamos de dónde venimos, para darle un sentido hacia dónde vamos. Nuestra herencia se llama innovación. Presentamos un balón que se transforma en nuestro legado, para seguir haciendo historia. Void, 100 años de innovación.
Renuncia a ser solo un espectador y conviértete en otro jugador en caliente.mx. Cientos de deportes durante todo el año y los mejores eventos en vivo. Descarga la app, regístrate y obtén 400 pesos de regalo.
Sean ustedes bienvenidos al Summit de la Liga BBVA MX 2022. Jorge Sánchez y Ana Katy Hernández los saludamos en esta ocasión para que nos acompañen a partir de hoy y hasta el próximo jueves en este evento de calidad internacional donde reuniremos a grandes líderes de la industria deportiva para conocer los nuevos alcances, métodos e ideas que mueven y revolucionan el mundo deportivo. Jorge, qué gusto acompañar.
Muy buenos días, Ana Katy. Para mí es un placer estar contigo y con todos ustedes. Serán 3 días de intensa actividad. Tendremos un total de 16 charlas donde abordaremos diversos temas como gestión de ligas, gestión de clubes, planeación de una selección de cara a la Copa del Mundo, fondos de inversión, experiencia del aficionado y tecnología, entre otros.
Por medio de estas 16 ponencias estaremos en contacto con los encargados de seguir enriqueciendo y desarrollando el mundo del deporte. Y por si fuera poco, cerraremos este evento con broche de oro conociendo nada más y nada menos a lo mejor de la temporada 2021-2022. Tendremos aquí la primicia de los nominados al Balón de Oro de la Liga BBVA MX, así que sencillamente está imperdible. Pero antes de esto es importante que saludemos y escuchemos al anfitrión de este Summit de la Liga MX. Mikel Arriola nos tiene preparado este mensaje para todos ustedes.
Buenos días a todas y a todos. A nombre de la Liga BBVA MX y los clubes que la integran, les doy la más cordial bienvenida a la edición 2022 del Summit Liga MX, la reunión anual virtual y multidisciplinaria de líderes y especialistas de todo el planeta en temas relacionados al deporte. Durante 3 días, del 7 al 19 de junio, podremos ver y escuchar a partir de las 9 horas del Centro de México a través de las plataformas digitales de la Liga BBVA MX, sesiones que abarcan temas de interés, actualidad y vanguardia de la industria deportiva desde las voces de quienes la lideran a nivel mundial. Agradezco a las y los especialistas que componen esta gran alineación, que nos honran con su invaluable presencia y que nos comparten sus conocimientos, destacando la presencia de don Garber, comisionado del MLS, el director de selecciones nacionales, Gerardo Torrado, el CEO de la Roma, Thiago Pinto, el CEO del Atlético de Madrid, Miguel Ángel Gil, Iris Córdoba, reconocida Top Woman in Sports y gerente general de Global Sports, así como al especialista y ex campeón del mundo, Jorge Valdán. También agradezco a los moderadores de distintos medios de comunicación, quienes a partir de su experiencia enriquecen cada una de las sesiones. Especialmente a TUDN por su ayuda para la producción de esta gran segunda edición. Y para concluir esta bienvenida, quiero agradecer también a quienes nos ven y nos escuchan por su atención y por su disposición para conocer más del mundo del deporte. Es un honor para mí darles la bienvenida al Summit Liga MX 2022, esperando que estos 3 días de cumbre sean de enorme provecho y satisfacción para todos ustedes. Yo devuelvo cámaras y micrófonos al estudio y que sea un gran evento. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Mikel. En breve estaremos de regreso contigo, pero antes queremos recordarles que esta es la segunda edición del Summit de la Liga BBVA MX en 2021. Ya escuchamos y tuvimos grandes testimonios de auténticos referentes. Javier Tebas, presidente de la Liga, Ferran Soriano, director general del City Football Group, Monchi Rodríguez, director deportivo del Sevilla, y John de Luisa, presidente de la Federación Mexicana de Fútbol, entre muchos otros. Y este año, créanme, el programa viene igual o recargado, Anacati.
Así es, y es que en esta edición del 2022 del Summit de la Liga BBVA MX tendremos la oportunidad de escuchar y entender los métodos de trabajo de don Garber, por ejemplo, comisionario de la MLS, también de Jorge Valdano, exfutbolista, campeón del mundo, directivo y comentarista deportivo, Miguel Ángel Gil Marín, el mandamás del Atlético de Madrid, la revolución portuguesa de uno de los clubes más icónicos de la Serie A, entre muchos otros. Así que prepárense para disfrutar, generar discusión y aprender de la industria deportiva junto a nosotros, que al final ustedes hacen mucho de este Summit del día de hoy.
Estamos listos, solo hay que revisar qué nos depara este primer día del Summit de la Liga BBVA MX 2022. Tendremos 5 ponencias. Iniciaremos con Mikel Arriola, presidente ejecutivo de la Liga BBVA MX, quien compartirá espacio con don Garber, comisario de la MLS, en la conferencia Liga MX y MLS, las competencias del futuro.
Así es, a ellos les seguirá Thiago Pinto, director general de la Roma, con su visión moderna en el fútbol de élite. El fútbol femenil también toma un espacio en la charla, y es que es el desafío del status quo, la inversión, la innovación y la generación de tecnología alrededor del deporte es fundamental. Por eso escucharemos a Javier Sobrino e Iris Córdoba como pioneros del ecosistema deportivo.
Para terminar el día, revisaremos un mercado que se está abriendo camino y de la mano de expertos abundaremos en el tema de los NFTs.
Además, en este gran primer día que tenemos preparado para ustedes del Summit de la Liga BBVA MX 2022, en este evento queremos tener la comunicación con ustedes porque son ustedes los que hacen posible que podamos detonar polémica y por supuesto discusión además de análisis. Lo hacemos a través de las diferentes plataformas, así que los invitamos a que interactúen con nosotros y se hagan presentes sin importar la distancia, esto solo a través de las redes sociales usando el hashtag Summit Liga MX, así como también pueden suscribirse de manera gratuita al evento en el sitio summit.ligamx.net. Jorge, está más que puesto todo.
Queremos leerlos, saber qué piensan, qué desean conocer del mundo del deporte. Así que sin más preámbulos, los dejamos con Alejandro Berry, quien será el encargado de moderar la primera ponencia, las competencias del futuro. 2 socios que tienen claro el objetivo de trascender a nivel internacional, con la expansión de la Leagues Cup, el Juego de las Estrellas y muchos planes a futuro. Alejandro Berry, amigo, estamos contigo.
Gracias, muchas gracias compañeros en el estudio. Thank you very much. My name is Alejandro Berry. I'm a sports anchor for 2DN, Televisa Univision, and it is my absolute pleasure being here with you for the Liga MX Summit 2022. We're going to be having important conversations with the most influential people in our business. So if you like soccer, this is where it's at. Thank you for joining us. And believe me, it's going to be worth your while. So before we dive into the questions and answers from our guests, let me introduce them to you. We have joining us here Mikel Arriola, Executive President of Liga MX, and also Mr. Don Garber, MLS Commissioner. So before we go ahead into the questions and answers, I just want to give you guys an opportunity to make some sort of an opening statement. So let's start with you, Mikel. First of all, thank you for having me. I know you're the host of the main event, second year in a row for me, and I hope you keep them coming. So, Mikel, thank you very much, and you can go ahead.
Well, Alejandro, thank you very much to you, and especially to my friend, to Don Garber. He has been sharing with me his advice, his knowledge, his experience, and it's a privilege to be today talking with Don about soccer in general, about football. And I think that this summit, if we start with Don, we are increasing the level of the summit to the top. So thank you very much, dear Don.
Thank you, Mikel, and I apologize that this is going to be in English. I appreciate everybody's flexibility, and I do apologize for that. I couldn't be more excited about this partnership, Mikel, and our great friendship and the relationship between our two leagues. And I think that relationship reflects the great opportunity that we have to build the sport and to make North America, particularly Mexico and the United States, soccer powers on the world stage. And that's going to be reflected in our new Leagues Cup and our Campeones Cup and other events that we've been playing, and the great interaction between Liga MX and Major League Soccer. This is just the beginning of a long and very, very important partnership. So can't wait. And I'm so appreciative of the great friendship that you and I have been able to create over the last year and a half.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don, and thank you, Mikel. So the panel for today, it's called Leagues of the Future, and we'll be talking about everything with our two guests today. So let me start by just talking about, Don, the current situation of MLS and of the league in general after what's been two very tough and very challenging years in every sense.
Well, it has, Ali, it's been very difficult for all of us in the sports industry. I just came from a convention, if you will, a conference in the United States of different sports leagues and owners and people that are involved in the overall industry here. And, we all suffered deeply from two difficult years, but, we're all back, and you can see it in the stands. You could see it in the excitement. You could see it with the activity among sponsors. You could see it in the great crowds that are happening down in Mexico and the crowds that are happening in the United States, the excitement about the World Cup as it relates to our sport. So we're ready. We're excited. We are very, very optimistic about what the next number of years will look like as we lead up to this unprecedented event in 2026. In MLS, we've got new teams and new stadiums and all this new energy that's happening. So there's a lot of optimism and a lot of excitement. And with that, we're going to take all that energy and we're going to put it together with Mikel and Liga MX and build something that I think will be the model for the rest of the world.
Yeah, sometimes you come out stronger from adversity. So, Mikel, let me ask you the same question, basically, because it's been tough and difficult. Is the worst part of it over? How are things currently doing in Liga MX? How healthy are your finances, by the way?
Well, with COVID, you cannot tell, no? But as of the data that we have in terms of epidemiology, we could say that all the effort and investment that Liga MX has made and the owners is generating positive results. I can see that in the next season, maybe we would be able to just concentrate in the analysis of those players with symptoms, no, and to provide them with the proper measures. However, we have invested around 90 million pesos in the last 4 seasons in terms of COVID analysis, and that's a huge investment. We lost in that period around 4 billion pesos, and now what we see in the month of June, we see a full recovery. You can see that football is a counter-cyclical industry. We have been recovering in terms of assistance. We are around the same level as the pre-COVID in our league. In our final part in the Liguilla, we can compare the assistance to the pre-COVID Liguillas, and that's very positive. We have a sustained increase in rating. We have to underline the development of the Women's League in rating, in assistance. And obviously, our EBITDA is a double-digit EBITDA, considering that we have had a period of pandemia where we lost every income related to the game day. And the other thing which is very positive is that we recovered interest in our fans nationally. In 2019, we decreased in terms of interest. We went from maybe 60%, 59% to 55%, and we have recovered. We went to 60% in among 2020 and 2022. So that I think this set of data is telling us that Liga MX is recovering, and we're going to talk about the booster today of Liga MX, which is this great relationship that we have been building with our partner, with MLS, and the activity that we're going to share as of this summer and the following years to come.
By the way, you can feel free to jump in at any given moment to make a casual conversation. But Don, let me ask you this: what are the big lessons learned from all of this? Are we better prepared for the uncertain if it comes to in the future? Because as Mikel said, with COVID, you really never know. It could be COVID or it could be something else. But I feel like this experience made us stronger and made us learn lessons that could be applicable in the near future as well.
Well, I agree with that, Alejandro. You know, from a medical perspective, I think all leagues, and I know I speak for us and for Mikel, we're very prepared for a whole new normal as it relates to testing and as it relates to monitoring the health of our players and the different things that we can do to be in front of what could be a ongoing endemic, if it's not a pandemic, meaning the idea that, you know, we're going to be continuing to live through different iterations of COVID. So we continue to look at different ways to test, and we have different therapies and different types of things like Paxlovid that you could take when you do get COVID, and you have the ability to be able to get free of the virus in a faster way. I think we're also better prepared to how to deal with our fans. So at least in many of our stadiums, we have the ability to monitor fans as they're coming into stadiums so that they're more comfortable. And as the pandemic here in the United States continues to go like this, right? And we're driven very similar to Mexico on different regulations that the individual states require as it relates to masking and vaccination and the like. All of those new procedures are allowing us to be in front of what could be the next situation that can be a challenge for us. I also think that we've learned, and I know I speak the same for Mikel, we've learned how to present our games differently. we played in a bubble. We had virtual advertising. We had the ability to create ways of driving new areas of revenues, so that if you were going to lose game day revenue because you were not able to have fans in the stands, how could you manage that differently so that you're not losing all of your revenue in the event that something like this comes forward? So I will say that it was a novel virus, meaning it was brand new, and we need to expect that it's probably not going away immediately. So we've just got to be prepared to live in a world where, these kinds of things are going to probably be with us for a while.
So let's talk about the future, Mikel. How do you see the league in general terms for the short, mid, and long term, the development and the evolution of Liga MX, vision for the future, if you will?
Well, let me tell you that in the sports side, we have been concentrating in generating more efficient games, more effective games, and to provide and to deliver more minutes to our fans. And that has been positive, I think. We started from 47 minutes in net terms in 2020. And now we're closing this season. We have reported almost 52 minutes. And now we're going to add some more mechanisms in order to accelerate our game. So you can measure that, and you can measure that that's generating more interest in our fans. Also, in terms of the sustainability of our league, we are talking about a better governance. For instance, in Liga Expansión, we have implemented a very strong financial fair play, and now we know the equilibrium in terms of finances of every team. And this year is the first year where the Liga MX team are going to provide their financial statements audited by a third party. And that, I think, generates a lot of transparency, and we need transparency to grow. And also, in terms of income, this is the first year where the income increase in Liga MX could represent the first opportunity to distribute from this source of income to our teams. We hadn't done that since we were born, so 100 years ago as a league. So I think those three pillars are working. And I think that, as I said, the most important policy that we are implementing is our internationalization. We have around 200 million fans in the world, 60 million in the US, and we have a great partner in the US, such as MLS. We want to share our players with them. We want to open this great scenario for our fans. The US is our main interest, and we have talked about this lots of time with Don. But I think that the example that we have with MLS in terms of governance, in terms of how do they merchandise football, and obviously the game day, for us, that's a great example in order to grow. And we want to grow together because we think that the North American region is the most compelling region in soccer, and it's the most attractive in terms of fans, in terms of players, and obviously in terms of, or in commercial terms.
And we'll get into the importance of partnership. But Mikel, let me ask you about violence. Let me ask you about violence in our stadiums, because we had an incident that we don't want it to repeat itself in Querétaro. So I was wondering, it happened this season, and it had serious consequences. So I wanted to ask you what measures have been taken, and have they worked so far since it happened?
Well, I think that we showed to the world, first, that we have the capacity to solve our own problems, that we have governance in terms of generating quick analysis and fast data in order to attack the real cause of the problem. And we identified two problems. The first was mismanagement of the club's management, and the second was the way these fan groups are aligned with violence. So what was our theory in March? Our theory was that their main advantage was that they didn't provide their identity to no one, no? The same as the hooligans in Britain. So what happened in 2 months? We asked for their identity, and we showed the information a couple of days ago. And the number of violent fans in Mexico in 2 months have reduced in 50% because we credentialized them. We are applying now a fan passport that will require the identity of every fan that goes into the stadium. And that, I think, it's an before and after for the Mexican future of football. And the great data here is that the assistance to the stadium with 60% or 50% less violent fans grew 11%. So our theory is now sustained by evidence. If you take out a violent fan, you will gain a couple of additional familiar fans that want to generate this support for their teams, but not to generate violence. So we have a before and after in positive terms in our league. And I see in the coming future, in the near future, that our assistances are going to keep increasing, and that our fight against violence and against violent fans and hooligans will increase in terms of success in this swap that we are concentrated in, swap between violent fans and great fans, supported fans that are aligned with this policy.
That is good to know and good to hear, because people just want to go to the stadium and have a good time and have a good experience. So, Don, back to you. A vision for the future. How do you see MLS in the years to come?
Well, let me just start by saying to everyone and give a clap, an applaud to Mikel. The day that this happened, he and I spoke and we expressed our support and our desire to help in any way. And Mikel, from the very, very beginning, he and his staff had a good plan. They were focused. I think the more time you spend with Mikel, you know that he is a data-oriented thinker and operator. And the idea that you can just snap your fingers and change 100 years of culture is impossible. But if you think about things differently and you go about making changes quickly, like the idea of the fan passport and like the idea of understanding who these people are and monitoring that and challenging that and then using all that information to change the dynamic, which I think has happened very quickly. And the data, obviously, Mikel shows that. So congratulations to you. And we've got great confidence in your plan and vision to deal with that and address it going forward. With MLS, it's a very different, it's almost a Harvard Business School study when you look at the difference in the two leagues.
Yeah.
In Liga MX, you have 100 years of history, and you have a sport that dominates the culture. And I say it's like food, family, and football down in Mexico. Those are the things that matter. And you could add, religion to that. Those are the things that drive the psyche and the emotion of the Mexican population. Well, in America, it's very different. You have so many sports and you have so many things that have been going on in our industry for that 100 years. And then you have MLS that's, just over 25 years old. building a league from scratch and doing it through new teams and new stadiums and creating a plan. Mikel and I talk about that as governance, to create a blueprint for the future. And that blueprint sort of has been playing out successfully over the last number of years. Our story still is about momentum. It is about capturing the heart and soul of all those people that care about soccer or football in the United States and have access to so many leagues. There's more soccer on television in the United States than any other sport by a lot. You have every league in the world is broadcast in the US, and there's no shortage of interest in following soccer in the United States. And our role is to create a local connection, a passionate cultural identity in each of our now 27 cities. And then how do you create history? And history is very difficult to create without actually going through it. So our plan is to try to go about it as quickly as we can and create those special moments that a family can share together, and trying to create a commercial opportunity around that. So that we have a new team that came in this year in Charlotte, which has been very successful. Its opening game with 70,000+ people, one of the biggest games in the world so far this year. We have a new stadium that came online in Nashville, 30,000 seats. It's selling out every game. A new team coming in St. Louis that'll come in next year. So much of this really is, excuse me. So much of this is about growth and momentum, and then ultimately, creating what we call a lifelong relationship with the fan. And that very much is what the MLS plan is about. It's what we think about every day. Secondly, I will say, and I know Mikel and I talk about this all the time, at the end of the day, we're in the game of putting on good soccer in our stadiums. And how do you make the game better? In our case, it's about investing in youth. We don't have promotion or relegation. We have a second league we just launched called MLS Next Pro. That is the equivalent of our second league, and every MLS club has one. Underneath MLS Next Pro is MLS Next. That's a national league of academies.
Yeah.
Right now, 10,000 kids are playing in MLS Next. And that pyramid, MLS Next Pro, Major League Soccer, is our professional pathway. And that is what we're very, very focused on in delivering a hopefully increasing passionate connection for our fans.
You said 27 teams, soon to be 30. Is it going to stay at 30, or can we expect more to come?
I think we got to get to 30, and then we'll figure out if we go beyond that. But think about that when you know the size of the other leagues. Mikel knows about the size of his league. The United States, we play in the U.S. and Canada. There are 350, 60 million people in our market. That's a lot of people.
Yeah. 3
time zones, multiple weather changes. We go from Vancouver to Miami, 65,000 miles.
I've made that place.
Between those two cities.
I know what you're talking about, yes.
So you have to have a lot of teams. It's really the only way that you could execute a national business.
So Don talked about, Mikel, the promotion relegation that is not part of MLS by design, but it was part of Liga MX. And it's actually a controversial topic when Liga MX decided to get rid of it. So let me ask you this. Has it worked, and is it coming back?
Just a couple of comments.
Good luck with that one.
We currently have, and the relegation hasn't disappeared in Mexico. We had a very serious situation related to the status of the second division in Mexico. And the status of the second division in Mexico was that we didn't know where the money was coming from, and the finances of the teams were unknown. So you had to do something about it. And we decided to make a pause of 5 years in relegation in order to implement financial fair play. And this is the second year after that, or maybe the third year, and the results are very important. We have Expansion League, which is a real development league. They have the second lowest ratio of age of the world in a development league, 23 years of age. And after 2 years of development, we have had 240 debuts of new players under 22 in Expansion, and 42 out of those players are now playing in Liga MX. So after or along those lines, in terms of fair play and economic sustainability, we generated a verification process that is related to the teams in the second division or in Expansion. They have to provide 3 times every season their financial status. So now we know in real time what is the status of the income and the expenditures of all those leagues. And now we have introduced a certification committee. So the certification committee is enabled to determine if those teams are able in financial terms in order to be candidates for promotion. And we have had the first meeting on May, and 1 out of 4 was certificated. And when we have 4 teams certificated, and one of them is the champion of champions, we will have promotion. And the decision of promotion now, Don and Alejandro, is not in my hands. It's in the hands of the teams, because they have predictability about the requirements. And that predictability, I think, is an incentive for them to comply. And also, that system generates value. We have received investment from Mexico and from the US in expansion teams. So I think that the best way to solve this huge problem that we had in 2019 that was putting in risk all the competition, this process has been hard. We have to explain it, but this process has been quite efficient in terms of results, and we are evolving.
So let's talk about the importance of partnership, which in essence really is teamwork. And I think it's a positive and a lot of room to grow for both leagues. How important is this for Liga MX, Mikel, the partnership with MLS? What does it mean, and what's coming in the near future for both leagues, looking at from a perspective of Liga MX?
Let me explain in colloquial terms, no? Because we could maybe plan, analyze, and implement around 20 different measures in order to grow. But if you analyze the growth of MLS, you can see that this MLS is the league with the strongest rhythm of growth in the world. They are growing in around 20% a year, no? And when I came to the league, we were growing in around 5% a year. So that was not the growth we wanted. And we started learning about what are the key elements for growth. One is governance, as Don has explained, and the other is focusing on the better quality of the game. So we decided that our main focus would be in joining strengths with MLS in order to grow in the same rhythm and to generate better quality of football in Mexico for our fans. I'm going back to the economics of the game. I think that the correlation among investment and growth in terms of quality in football, not only in Mexico or in the US, is investment. The most you invest, the more titles you will win. And you can go to a very explicit example that we had in Seattle a couple of weeks ago. We saw how MLS has been evolving, and we saw how MLS is investing in quality, and these rhythms of growth are traduced in better results in the pitch. So that is our theory, and that is obviously very well based in evidence, and we want that growth. And obviously, the best partner to do that is MLS, and the near past explain itself. We have been playing the All-Star game. It's a privilege to be there in the second time. We have a Campeones Cup. And while maybe Europe was discussing about these leagues for the rich teams, we were discussing about development of soccer or football in the region, when we started designing and building this Leagues Cup 2023, which is unique in the world.
Yeah. And before we get to the Leagues Cup, just let me ask you this, Don Garber, because I'm sure this is something you want to talk about, and that is the Seattle win in CONCACAF against Pumas. What does it mean to MLS to finally break that ceiling and win the CONCACAF title? What does it mean now, and what does it mean going forward?
You know, Mikel and I, we haven't talked much. We saw each other at the game, but we didn't talk much after the game. And I think we have a somewhat of a different perspective. And this is interesting because Mikel and I are talking to each other about this while we're on a session in front of other people. You know, I don't necessarily look at things as they happen in the moment and have that determine, the deliverable of short-term strategy, because we're thinking about this long-term. We have been losing to Liga MX in the Champions League forever, since the beginning. And the difference in the two leagues is fairly significant over the years in terms of the quality and the competitiveness of the Mexican clubs versus the MLS teams. The Liga MX teams spend more money on players. And there's a direct correlation in our sport between what you spend and what you get. You could look at that in the world of global football, right? It's directly correlated. But I think we all need to be careful to think about how that plays out over time, right? Because one game does not one day does not a strategy make, right? It has to be thought about over an extended period of time. We've been working on trying to improve the quality of play in Major League Soccer for many, many years, and not do that simply by spending money on players alone. Because ultimately, and this goes back to the governance discussion that Mikel and I have every time we're together, is that it's the collective strategy that determines your economic viability. Because if we were to allow, for example, our teams to spend whatever they wanted to, we have some owners, the family that owns, or the entity that owns the City Football Group or Red Bull, or pick some of our owners are among the wealthiest people in the world. They could spend as much as Liverpool spends. But what would that ultimately do to the broader competitiveness of the league? And what would that do to the economics of Major League Soccer if you don't have the revenues to support that kind of spending? So we have a series of rules which some of our fans get frustrated with.
Yeah.
And you've talked to me about it and complain about it on all your various, though you're polite and love us, but it's very strategic in terms of how we go about thinking about where we spend in our roster, so that ultimately we could do it in a way where you raise the overall quality of the league, and measured really against Liga MX and our other regional rivals, without blowing your brains out. And I think Seattle's a good example. They do not spend remotely close at the top. They're smart. They've had consistency. They've had only 2 coaches in the history of the club. They've had players that have been there for an extended period of time. They recruit from certain parts of the region. They're not going out and signing players necessarily from Europe, and many of them being older as opposed to being younger. They have a mix of American and primarily South American players. And that formula has worked for them. They've made the playoffs every year they've been in the league.
Yeah.
And they won the championship many times. And now for the first time, they won the Champions League final. And we're happy about that. I went to Mikel and said, if you really want to have a strong MLS, you should let us win. And I want a strong MLS. We're not going to let you win.
Yeah.
But I think it's actually very good for what we're trying to do to have MLS be more competitive against Liga MX. But
we didn't count with Rui Diaz, Don.
What's that?
Yeah.
We didn't count with Rui Diaz.
Yeah, we couldn't deal with Rui Diaz.
So I do really think very much about, and our league does, and we're very focused and analytical about how do we work to help our teams have the tools they need to be able to be strategic about how they invest while keeping competitive balance within the league, which, by the way, Liga MX has done, right? You have different winners of the Aperture and the Clausura almost all the time, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
And I think that's a point of difference for our two leagues. So ultimately, we're excited about winning, but if we lost, it wouldn't prove to us. We don't have the same kind of media scrutiny as you know, Alejandro. If we lost, it wouldn't be like MLS is over. It would just mean that we would have to work that much harder the next time. And hopefully we can turn that excitement into something that will make the Leagues Cup even more compelling. I stood on the stage with Mikel and said, imagine when we have this every year.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're going to build.
And I'm actually very happy for you guys, because I mean, I followed the league for many years very closely, and it was coming. And the thing is, nobody deserved it more than Seattle because of that consistency that you were talking about. And I'm sure you'll represent CONCACAF in a very good way during the World Clubs Cup. Yeah. So congratulations.
One last thing that I'll say, which is positive, and again, I think it benefits everybody. Certainly it benefits Liga MX, it benefits the rest of the world. This country has woken up to the sport. And the rest of the world has noticed that. FIFA certainly has, CONCACAF has. And the number of kids that are playing now in a professional pathway environment with so many MLS teams in the US and Canada developing players in a very, very strategic way. We will only, just because of the simple size of our country and the investment that's being made by MLS teams in developing players, the future will be bright. Our national team will get better. The league will get better. Liga MX will get better. Their national team would get better. And our dream is to have our region be competitive with Europe and be competitive with South America.
And one of those key elements, Mikel, is surely the Leagues Cup. I mean, that's going to be a signature move on both parts. So can you really talk about the planning behind that, and what do you expect coming out of that tournament?
Well, I don't know if Don agrees, but I'm quite new here in the football environment. But when I arrived to the league, we were convinced that we should continue working together, and we had very important properties together, such as Campeones Cup, the All-Star Game, and we were planning in growing, and we were not sure in what way. So our great plan, our great scenario was to have a tournament, a monthly tournament in the year with all of our teams, and that tournament would be official by FIFA or CONCACAF. So we started discussing the strategy. In those times, I remember that the amount of games of CONCACAF Champions League was growing, and the problem in Europe, or the conversation in Europe, was another one in terms of income for the Champions League. So that was that had the spillover effects in politics. of the countries, and we were building together. And during the first semester of last year, we had lots of meetings in terms of designing this mechanism to share our strengths. And I think that I would underline the strengths of MLS in terms of governance, their centralization strategy of assets, their financial and corporate governance. For us, that's very important. And obviously, the chance of playing 85 matches once a year, kind of a football summer extravaganza that is official, that is unique. So when we announced that, remember, Don, that was, I think, kind of traumatic to other leagues. They didn't imagine that we had the capacity to build this kind of competition. And our fans in Mexico and in the United States are going to receive a month of very competitive games. You can imagine the champion of Leagues Cup could be the team that represent CONCACAF in the Leagues World Cup. No,
Yeah,
that is the importance.
Is it a tease or an experiment for something bigger to come, like a joint league in the future, or is that not even part of the conversation, Don?
I mean, I think right now, let's get the tournament right, Alejandro. You know, we've got a lot of work to do. I mean, we're underestimating the amount of work. You have 85 games. You're closing the league down during a period of time. You know, in 2026, you have the World Cup during that period of time. There's so much work to do. You know, everybody, and it's understandable that fans and partners and media, and it says, well, what does this really mean long term? Well,
there's speculation about it, obviously.
Every journey starts with a small step. We took the small step with the announcement, but we got a long journey ahead.
So the World Cup in 2026. US is a host country, Mexico is a host country, as well as Canada. What is that going to mean in terms of growth and potential for MLS and Liga MX, Don?
Well, you know, listen, it's going to be good for everybody. You know, the entire world of soccer here is going to be uplifted and have rocket fuel, if you will, in the time leading up to the World Cup and then in the time after that, because the whole world will be paying attention to what's happening. I know Mikel could talk about what's happening with their markets, but here in the U.S., it's enormously, you know, there's a great opportunity. The cities are all getting excited. You know, there are big stadiums that will be filled, and the world will be looking upon us during the summer of 26, and it in my view will be the biggest sporting event in the history of sport, and there'll never be anything quite like it because of its unprecedented nature. You know, you're playing in a market that has, let's even think that maybe there'll be other World Cups that will have joint countries playing, but you're talking about almost 500 million people. And you take Mexico, the U.S., and Canada, I mean, it's just a massive amount of people that all will be touched locally. So couldn't be more excited, Alejandro. It's going to be great.
Mikel, because you certainly are going to ride the wave as well. I mean, this could take Liga MX and MLS to a whole different level after the World Cup because of the level of interest, of global interest that is going to be upon you.
Well, yes, Alejandro. And we have to remember that from here to 2026, we will not have qualifiers on our national teams. So imagine the importance of Leagues Cup. We will be there every year, generating competition between both countries. For the world, as Don said, the NAFTA region is 33% of the international commerce in net terms. So that's very important. This is going to be the best World Cup ever, and is going to be the third World Cup for Mexico and the second for the US. So I think part of this strategy is from here to 2026 to generate another kind of growth between leagues from here to 2026. And that would help, obviously, the competitiveness of the US national team and of the Mexican national team, because we will be certainly in another stage of value in those dates.
So last question for both of you, just to close it up and let you guys work on what you need to do. Fan engagement, how to create it, how to grow it, especially for the new generations, because that's where the bread and butter is, Mikel, for Liga MX.
Well, first we have to keep learning of the game day of MLS, I'm sorry. They are spectacular. They are homogeneous in their stadiums. They generate a lot of interaction between the fans and the players. And they have generated some other bridges, which are now very technological and digital bridges, which are NFTs, fan tokens, these kind of things that generate interaction. We are developing on that. I think we can show lots of strengths, but one of our areas of opportunity is fan engagement. And I think that this partnership with MLS will show us the way to do it, and obviously to generate more fan engagement with our 60 million fans in the US.
Done.
So, this is where the North American, sports market leads the sport, Alejandro. This is our bread and butter. I don't know how it happened that way, and maybe it's because of the commercial nature of sport in the United States, which is different than the birth, if you will, of football around the world, which comes out of community and this deep relationship that fans have with their cities or their communities. So in many ways, because we have the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, you have college sports, you have baseball, you have soccer, you've got the UFC, you've got so many different offerings that the clubs led by the league on a national basis has to be very, very sophisticated in how they go about understanding what motivates a person to become a fan. How do you feed that passion? How do you track that relationship? How do you come up with different ways to empower it? Mikel mentioned fan tokens and all sorts of other things. And, remember, the US really is still the home of technology. So many of these companies that come out of, last night I attended the sports business industry, annual event, and they give awards for these technology companies. You just can't believe what some of these entities are doing now to create a relationship between a fan and their favorite team. And I believe this is just beginning because of the new ways that we're understanding where data lives, and how do you understand that data without violating privacy, and how do you feed the customized, personalized passion of a fan. And we do that. We spend a great deal of our time and energy on that. It's a big investment. Our clubs are investing a lot in that area, and I'm very, very confident that in a digital world with no borders, it will be easy for Liga MX to tap into all that opportunity, because that's really where the world is going today. Personalized, individual connections with things that matter to them.
And by the way, Don, now that Mikel mentioned the 60 million Mexican fans living in the US, is there any way to compete for those eyeballs? Because, first of all, for many heritage reasons, Mexican community in the US follows America and Chivas more than the LA Galaxy or the Seattle Sounders. Is there any way you can compete for that market as well?
Well, you know, it's interesting. 30 to 35% of our fan base is Latino or is Hispanic. And remember, the Hispanic market in the United States is continuing to evolve and become multi-generational. So the Mexican-American market in Dallas is very different than it might be in Columbus, Ohio, or in Atlanta, Georgia, or in Seattle. Pick the various MLS markets. And their relationship with their parent, who might have an association or a passion with Club America, for example, might be different if they live in Seattle. I don't know if I was standing with Mikel, but I think we were together the other night, and I pointed out a family that was sitting in the stands, and the dad was wearing a Club America jersey, by the way, even though Club America wasn't in the game, and the kids were wearing a Sounders jersey.
Yeah.
And you had a number of people that were families with Mexico flags, and you had the same member of the family with, you know, a U.S. flag. That's the beauty of what we have together that no other league can offer.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something that I've noticed going around most of the MLS stadiums, especially young people in communities like Dallas, maybe even New York, LA, like young kids have their favorite MLS team, like let's say Galaxy, but they also support Chivas or America. So they have like two teams for of each league. Like I support my MLS team and I have my Liga MX team as well, which is the best case scenario.
Yeah, and it makes us both work harder, by the way, because our local clubs are going to have to earn the connection, the trust, and the love and passion of a fan who might be previously a fan of Necaxa, pick the team, you know, of Atlas, of you know, and because it's in that home market, you want them to be a fan of the local team.
Exactly.
But maybe they're able to do both. Maybe they will watch a Liga MX game on television, but they'll also watch, you know, an MLS game as well. That's not a bad thing. I actually think that's a good thing for us.
For sure. So let's close it out. I don't know if you have any closing statements or you want to talk about something else, player development or whatever you have in mind, just to close out the session and the panel, Mikel.
Well, thank you, Alejandro. I think that it's going to be a great year for both leagues and that we are working hard, as Dan is stating, and that we are going to keep our efforts in order to increase our quality, to generate more value together, and that this is a unique example in the world. You cannot find this in any pair of countries, in any region, in any pair of leagues. So this is for the benefit of our fans.
Done.
I mean, I think I would say the same thing, Alejandro. I mean, we both have the desire to make this region more important, more powerful. We both have individual and commercial objectives, and we have our own business objectives. But at the end of the day, we need to look at each other as partners competing against Serie A and Barcelona and Real Madrid and Manchester United and the English Premier League, who are coming into Mexico and coming into the United States and trying to create fans. And our opportunity really is how can we create fans together and then ultimately create a business opportunity together. And I couldn't think of a better partner to do it with.
Thank you, Tom.
Don Garber, MLS Commissioner, Mikel Arriola, Executive President of Liga MX. I'm Alejandro Berry, Sports Anchor for 2DN. I want to thank everyone for joining us. And I want to invite you to stay here tuned in the Liga MX Summit 22 for the next panels to come. Interesting conversations, all of them. So thank you very much, Don, Mikel, and we'll send it back to you guys in the studio. Muchas gracias. Adelante.
Muchísimas gracias, Alex, y por supuesto también a Don Garber y por supuesto a Mikel Arriola. Qué interesante entender un poco más de la alianza que se está gestando entre la MLS y por supuesto la Liga MX, sobre todo porque es uno de los cuestionamientos que quizás de manera más constante se le presentan a los fanáticos.
Totalmente de acuerdo, Ana Katy. Definitivamente es una alianza que llegó para quedarse. Ahora me parece que también en México los directivos tendrán que entender que habrá que jalar todos para el mismo lado y que no solamente sea una alianza muy fuerte en temas económicos, económicos, por supuesto buscando el desarrollo de la liga, la marca, sino también en lo deportivo. Esa competencia que no debe dejar de existir.
Y que se pueda permitir, ¿no?, el desarrollo también de los futbolistas, tanto en la MLS como, por supuesto, en la Liga BBVA MX. Los invitamos a que se sigan sumando a esta transmisión por las diversas plataformas y que se unan a la conversación. Díganos qué piensan respecto a este tema a través de las redes sociales usando el hashtag #SummitLigaMX. Vamos a una breve pausa para seguir en este primer día del Summit de la Liga BBVA MX. Ya regresamos.